Penis.
He's on a fucking different level. He's like simultaneously the most serious and yet immature one.
He's definitely the most annoyed.
He's the most easily amused at the words like penis.
Yeah, that is a funny word though. To be
Chode, for example, he likes that one. You see, he's laughing.
Like chode. Oh no!
Clip that now. Good morning and welcome to the Hobby Breakfast Show, kicking off your morning with Wargaming Chat. Your hosts today are myself, Onod. We also have the Mayor.
Hello, everyone.
And we have back from his first ever tournament, OT.
Hi, everybody.
Woo. Well done.
No.
That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the tournament, Winter Wonderland. Ooh. Was it Wonderland? Was it Winter? It was definitely one of those words. We'll see in a second. You don't need to sing it. That's the beauty of the editing. Great. So, Mayor and OT went to the Winter Wonderland tournament in Worcester this weekend. Although by the time this is published, it might be a fortnight ago. Now I'm confused. Yeah. It was a time ago. And we are going to be looking over their experiences. It was a 3-game tournament. Have I got that right?
Yep.
So each of you played 3 games. OT took his Rivendell Knights of much fame.
Yep. Finally painted. Although I had to critique his the rims of his bases that technically were finished.
They were in shoddy condition.
Was it a bad rim job? I just took a sip of tea. I just want to let that really sink in. Okay, yeah. I agree. Thought those rims out. And Mayor took his scumbag list.
It's not a scumbag list, although I did quickly find that it was very powerful, I have to say.
Yeah. It was way more powerful than I expected.
Yeah, it was better than I thought it would be.
Yeah. It turns out the combination of Mayor's high rolling with just spamming goblins at low points is quite good.
It is.
Who could have seen
that? We'll find out later. There are quite a few very nice things about the tournament. Liam did an amazing job. There was a kind of hobby bingo that we did. So it was a 5x5 grid, and once you completed a line or a row, you got a prize. I think everyone got a prize in the end, but it was things like complete a heroic combat, kill the enemy leader, complete a spell, kill the enemy's leader, use a weapons ability, use a character special ability, things like that. And after you completed a row, like I said, you shouted bingo and you got a prize. There were also spot prizes for each game. So it was things like the first person to kill the enemy leader got a prize. What were the other ones at OT? I don't remember.
There was like successfully complete a heroic combat, kill an enemy hero, I think was one of them. They were just sort of, because I think the tournament had like a real range of like relative experiences of players. Like I bizarrely wasn't the least experienced player there, despite this being my first proper tournament. Like there were lots of people who genuinely had like barely played the game before.
Yeah.
So it was just designed to like support everybody in just like having a fair shot at the game, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, I thought it was really well done.
What prizes did you win then in the bingo?
There were some little objective markers kindly supplied by the Guardians of Wiltshire, which are is Dewey Evans. He sells all sorts of great stuff for MESBG. He's also the Team Wales captain. And of course,
are we getting paid for this?
We won. We won.
This is longer than our whaling.
Anyone who's listening to us definitely knows who he is. So we're not spoiling anyone's.
Or at least they should once they follow our affiliate link.
There we go. Good.
You're welcome, Dewey. I'm sure he'll get so many more purchases having us shout him out. Yes, it was a really fun event. It was at Worcester War Games. We had people from Cheltenham and Gloucester and Bristol. It was really good
Such
fun.
exotic locations.
Yeah, from far and wide. So we've got,
corner of the Shires.
We took some photos of all our games, and we're going to share with you, dear listener, some of those pictures and run through how the games went.
You didn't tell me what prize you won. I wanted like your specific prize.
Oh yeah, we all got the same prize. It was the little bases.
All right, okay.
And you get like the little objective token thingies.
Yeah,
Everybody
the little
are those the things you use to measure
No.
But if the viewers are interested in a way to measure their mold moving around,
now it's a shameless plug.
No, but yes, I did actually have those. I didn't end up using them. So anyway, the listeners are probably looking at a picture of our lists right now, as per the first slide. Shall we go through the games then?
Yep.
Yes.
Right, me up first. So game one. Also the first time I played literally all the scenarios that came up in this tournament. So I was I had some to be fair, I wasn't completely useless because I had like actually read through most of them before, so I knew what was going on. But my opponents were pretty patient if I was being a scrub about anything, which was nice. So but yeah. So this one, I've just listed the key information. Basically, you got points for wounding enemy leader, breaking the enemy force, if you had a banner, which will come in crucial later in a misplay that I made, and if you got the enemy force down to 25%. So yeah, those were basically how you win this one. It's a pretty standard one. I think it's a bit more straightforward than some of the objective-based one that require a bit more like planning ahead. This one is like more like a sort of traditional battle, trying to win that way. So yeah, this is my army, stays the same throughout, and my opponent's army. You actually faced this one later, Mayor.
Yes.
So yeah, it was a pretty solid list. He didn't have much shooting, but he just had two solid heroes and some nice warriors in there as well. So yeah. So a couple of photos. My photos weren't particularly good, so I have instead used the medium of some graphics to try and describe.
It's like I'm watching like something on the History Channel.
A really low budget version of the History Channel. So yeah, onto the first page. So I deployed bottom left with my knights. Basically, I've not bothered putting any of the terrain on the right-hand side because literally nothing happened in that half of the board, which was, again, probably a mistake by me. Everything happened in this half of the board.
So describe to us what the red blobs are and what the blue blob
basically, the red blobs are just how I ended up splitting up my knights. So I had like a big contingent on the left-hand side and a smaller group here and a smaller group here. I had 12 knights in total, plus my banner, who I've labelled separately because he's quite important. Yeah, so big contingent on the left, and then sort of two groups of 3 on the right-hand side. Then Elrond tucked in behind, just to keep him safe from the bows. Basically, what I did was I think I deployed first, and then my opponent deployed after. He basically had a mixture of some dwarves and then some Knights of Dale. So the Dale was on the left-hand side with Brand, and then Thorin and his dwarves were on the right-hand side, and he just sort of set up there. And like the first 2 turns, he just sort of, both of us were pretty cautious. Like I moved up a little bit just to get into bow range of his front line without his back line being able to shoot me. But yeah, I was just trying to like snipe off a few of his dudes before I got into combat. Yeah, I mean, am I just going to literally describe what happened? Is this just going to be like a bit of a monologue for the next?
Well, when something like interesting happens, we'll probably tell them. So far, you've deployed basically, and moved.
Okay, I'll keep going. So I've split into 3 pictures. So the initial picture is just like deployment in the first few turns, moved up and sniped off. I actually got a couple of lucky kills. I had 1 Knight of Rivendell in range on my first turn of shooting, and I killed a dwarf warrior with shield wall. Wow. It was on a hit on a 4, and then it wounded on a 6x4. And like me and my opponent, there was that moment where it hit, and he was like, oh, "Okay," and then the next wound went in, and we both would lent forward a bit because I'd rolled the 6, and we were like, "No way, is it going to be a 4?" and then I rolled in and hit a 5. So yeah, sniped off one of the guys on the end, which was nice. That was pretty much the high point of the battle. It was all downhill from there. If I'm being brutally honest, it came a bit of a clusterfuck pretty quickly. So he basically hid this sort of blue square on the right-hand side, represents a like a big block of ice, which you can see in the initial pictures. And basically he just hid behind there as best he could to avoid my bow fire. And I think what in hindsight I should have done is sort of move my forces maybe a bit round to the right and try and get into a bit more of an open area. Like there was terrain over here, but there were definitely open spaces over here. But instead what I did, as you can see in picture 2, is despite having a massive ranged advantage wanting to pick my battles in like an open area, I charged into a pretty narrow choke point with all my knights. Actually, again, got pretty lucky with some shooting and was able to snipe off a few of his dudes. But like as soon as we got into combat, like things just really started to go downhill.
You can see that from the last slide, but that's coming later. It does go to shit pretty quickly. I don't know. I think like I knew what I was trying to do. There was no doubt. Like I knew in my head I should have backed off a bit more, and like I definitely didn't like throw this game at all. Like that's not what I'm saying, but like I just definitely high rolled my first few turns of shooting, and this my opponent just said the phrase like, "Oh, I hate playing against Riv Knights," and I was like, "Oh, I don't actually just want to be that guy that turns up at a fun tournament and then kites the entire game with Rivendell Knights against dwarves and like just kills one every other turn." Like I think that is a bit of a shitty thing to do.
Fell for a classic ploy there. You got guilt tripped.
Guilt trip, but like I don't know.
New era.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I did just think all my opponents were fairly nice, and I just didn't want to like.
You need to ruthlessly kick them whilst they're down.
And I think if I'd wanted to, if I'd gone full try hard mode, that's probably what I should have done. But I didn't do that, and it did end up costing me because as soon as you charge in with the Riv Knights and you lose the initiative, you just lose, like because it turns out they are actually fairly flimsy. So yeah, you can see in the next slide. I'll just jump back to it now. In the final slide, after a few turns of combat, he was able to pretty just effectively like surround my forces. Elrond actually did really well. Like he held his own for a few turns against like multiple combats from Thorin and Brand. The one mistake I made, you can see from the arrows in the second slide, he heroic combated with Brand between a gap in between two of my knights and was able to snipe my banner. Because I'd actually thought I'd been pretty smart with my banner. I hid it behind two knights. But the problem is, once you kill the knight, there is actually a huge gap in your line. And he literally just ran through and just sniped off my banner in one turn. And unfortunately, because of the way the VPs work, had I had the banner, I probably would have stood a much better chance. As soon as I lost the banner, I knew I was in a bit of trouble. So yeah, that was not ideal. I mean, if I'd been smart and if I'd really wanted to win, what I probably would have done is stay at range and just try and snipe Thorin to get like the 1 VP for wounding the leader and just kept my banner alive, because that probably would have just been the gamey way to do it.
Is that the only thing you'd do differently then?
I don't know. I think I got lured in a bit because like I'd never played this list before as well. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to get them, because the charges actually lined up really nicely because I had big movement advantage. Like I was way more maneuverable. So like the first turn I was actually able to line up some really nice charges, and like those Riv Knights with the Lancers on the charge, they are absolutely ridiculous. Like because there were some really nice breakpoints in this one as well, because when I was able to separate out a few of the dwarves, they're only D7, but with Lancers, that's wounding on 5s. So if you're able to knock one down, suddenly you've got 4 attacks wounding on 5s, which is really solid.
Yeah.
But I think I think I almost just ran out of might was the thing, because as soon as Elrond's in repeated combat, like my opponent struck up once, I had to strike up as well, otherwise he would have died. And even with like his 3 fate re-rolling, when he's surrounded by 2 heroes who are getting like combined when he's trapped like 10 attacks, suddenly you are in like quite a lot of trouble. And my opponent did some really nice plays, because Thorin's got a 2-handed pick, and he was like piercing striking with Thorin 2-handed, and like I think he ended up wounding on 4s or something, and it was just I was feeling like really confident with Elrond, like, oh, there's no way he's going to die. And then after like 2 or 3 turns, I was like, actually, he can't survive this any longer. He's going to get wrecked. But I didn't get tabled. I had 1 dismounted archer who was able to run away. That very small scare was able to run away and keep me alive. But yeah, there was some really nice moments in the game. Like I high rolled with shooting, but then he responded by Thorin has a rule where you roll a 5 up to get a 3 point of might, and he hit 5 of those in a row. Ended up spending a total of 7 might with Thorin and only used 2, which was really nice. So he was literally like, he was like, this has never happened to me before. He actually spoke to me the other day. He was like, it didn't work a single time after I played you.
It worked against me.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Once.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it was literally just. Because like at the start, like my shoot was high rolling, and he was like, "Show me that 6," and I would just roll it, and it would be a 6, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then, he was just
reverse psychology was going to work.
Yeah, and then he was doing his stuff with the might, and I was like, "Show me that 5," and it would be a 5 up every time. He was like, it doesn't normally do.
No.
But yeah, those GW dice, man. He had the Dale dice.
Oh right.
And I had my Rivendell Knight dice, and like, you get those GW dice, and you'll see the results come quick. Like
they're OP. They really are.
They need a nerf. I heard. I think the balance patch is coming
soon.
Though.
They're just better than regular dice. That's the truth.
But yeah, end result. It wasn't a catastrophe, and I think if I was more experienced with the list and I'd been playing more tryhardy, I think actually I would have had a really good shot of winning this game. I don't think I necessarily would have done, but I think like I did just make some really obvious mistakes that even at the time I was like, oh, this feels a bit dumb. But yeah, a really nice opponent. I think we both, I don't know if we both voted each other most sporting, but like, there was a quest on the bingo sheet we had to like play honorably or something, and we were both like really happy with that. So yeah, first game down.
Cool. 3-8 loss.
Yeah.
So that takes us on to my first game. It's the same scenario, obviously, to the death. So if you hadn't worked out from the picture earlier, my army is the Goblin King, Grinnah, a captain, and the scribe, and then a shit ton of goblins, which brings it up to 65 models. And I was playing against Dane with his piggy, 6 crossbows, 3 goat riders, 7 with warriors with shields, and 1 warrior with banner. Luckily, I took plenty of photos, so there'll be no History Channel style infographics. But essentially, my plan for this game was, because he had so many crossbows that I really didn't want to give him an advantage for, I stayed out of 24, just kept getting more goblins, because I say that you'll see how many goblins I got in the end and on what turns, but I didn't get very many goblins at the beginning. You can see on the left of the first picture there are 2 goblins who have just come in. I got 2 goblins on the first turn and then nothing for 3 turns. So I was basically staying out of range, and I was creeping up on the left and right where I could. And eventually he was like, right, I need to do something, otherwise you're just going to get loads more goblins. So he moved forward, but because I'd lost priority, I then moved forward, closing the gap, and then spent a couple turns moving up. I think he only killed 2 or 3 goblins by the time I'd got to him. He consolidates his force into the middle, by which time, as you can see from the second photo, I've well and truly moved up The Goblin King had a go at chucking a couple goblins because there was actually a hobby bingo thing for an in the way roll. You had to succeed in the way roll. So I was just trying to get my in the way roll. I don't think I got it in the end. I did hit a couple times, but didn't manage to kill anyone. So Dane was looking pretty feisty. I didn't have any heroes on the left, so I was a bit worried he'd just charge in there and kill everything. But he ended up staying in the middle. And then the next picture, you can see I managed to roll 3 1s. So this was the first turn of combat where you can see Dane on the left managed to charge, or maybe I charged him. I can't remember. I think he must have charged me there. I moved all my goblins in. I wanted to stay back for 1 turn, give my force on the left time to come in and flank everything. But what I did do was charge the Goblin King into this Goat Rider with the intention of combating off of the Goat Rider and then going into... So I turn combat off him, kill him, go into the dwarf that's just above where you can see the Goblin King, and then hurl that dwarf all the way down the line. Nice. Try and win combat, win a heroic move off next turn, and then move all my goblins in, charge everything that had gone down. Those 3 1s, the Goblin King has 1 might left, I think, at this point. It might even be 2, actually. That's his to wound roll. So I needed like 3s. Maybe it was 4s, I can't remember. But either way, I didn't manage to combat off that goat. Then the next picture, this is maybe a couple turns after that. Everything's managed to move in now. I'm just sort of swallowing his force. I actually thought this mission was the one where you get a point for wounding a model. So at this point, I was sure I was losing. And then the last photo, essentially everything just snowballed, and I had 4 to 8 goblins on every single one of his dwarves, and he just couldn't win combats. I was managing to kill him because he didn't have shield wall, so I just needed 6s as opposed to 6s by 4s. Dane, I just moved 1 guy into him every turn. Even if he kills 4 goblins a turn, he's not making his points back. And my Goblin King manages to kill his banner in the last turn, which gave me an 8-0 win. I'd broken him, he hadn't broken me, so everything was pretty good. Goblins killed. He'd killed 21. I reinforced with 17 goblins. So it was a net loss of 4 goblins by the end of the game. And unfortunately, most of them didn't manage to do anything because my rolls were 2 on the first turn, 0, 0, 0, 3, 0, 3, 5, 3, 1. So all the goblins came at the end of the game. There was very little he could do, to be fair. I think the only thing he maybe could have done was, as he admitted at the end of the game, but didn't really want to be that guy, he could have sat in the corner and just waited for me to come to him. Even then, I'm not sure if that would have helped. Perhaps he could have put some crossbows on a building, but again, even that I'm not sure would help. So suddenly I was like, goblins are fucking good.
Yeah, I've been where this guy was, like, having played against your goblins, like, and been in this scenario where, like, I think some armies in SPG are quite snowbally, but I think you feel it with goblins more than anything else, because, like, if that scribe starts high rolling and, like, it starts to go against you, especially with dwarves and with these dwarves, when you lose that shield wall, like, it's just suddenly goes to shit so quickly. Like, because actually looking at the second photo in photo 9, like, it looks like he's got a fairly solid formation, and actually, like, you can sort of see what he's doing in the third photo as well, like trying to, like, keep that shield wall together and try and, like, not get flanked. But then you can actually just see so quickly in the last 2 how, like, you just get enveloped, and when you've got more than double the models of your opponent, you can literally just like swarm all over them, and nothing you can really do.
No, and it did feel a bit like that. It felt I almost felt bad. So yes, an 8-0 win for me.
Beautiful.
Almost.
But not quite. Yeah. Okay. My game 2. I assume we're doing it in this order.
Yeah.
Right. This game, I don't know why. It's just as soon as I deployed, I had this like gut feeling. I was like, I'm just definitely going to lose this, and I could never articulate that reason. But it's just something about the way we deployed, and I was like, I'm in a lot of trouble here. So for this one, your objectives were spread out around the board. It'll become a bit clearer in a second when I show you the picture. But basically, there's one that's on your side of the board. There's two in the middle, and then there's one on effectively your opponent's side. VP for the leader, 2 for killing, and then if they're broken, you get an extra point. He had just a quite straightforward Isengard list. Vrasku was his leader. Then he had Gorolf and an Oathmaker with a few Wildmen thrown in there. But yeah, smattering of crossbows, pretty standard.
Weird list. I feel
Why
like
is it weird?
I don't think people take the Oathmaker. I think he must play in a meta where there's like loads of terror. Because otherwise, like Wildmen are just shit.
Well, weirdly, the terror thing came through later when he was coming into Elrond. It actually worked surprisingly well. So anyway,
pipe down.
Yeah, I agree. Like literally, I asked because also they weren't painted, and I was like, "What are those dudes?" He was like, "Oh, they're just Wildmen." I was like, "Okay, fair enough," but we'll see how they go. Anyway, first slide. So we deployed a bit like this. Where's my picture gone? Have you not moved my picture up there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's your picture?
Oh, I put one in, you scrub. Hang on, I'll move it back up.
Oh,
I'm definitely not cutting this out. Leave it. I've got it.
Okay.
Right.
I was wondering where the picture was.
Yeah. We deploy like this. Basically, there was quite a lot of terrain, and it was all buildings. So there was a lot of stuff to break up line of sight. Both of us had quite shooty armies. He had 8 crossbows and Vrasku. Yeah.
Why didn't he deploy his crossbows on the building?
There was no upstairs bit. So on none of so on his bit there was no. So on my bit was the only one I think that had this sort of upstairs bit up here.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I'm not actually sure. Maybe there was some on the right hand side. We didn't deploy it up there. So basically, one huge disadvantage, as it turns out, with this force is if you only have one warband, your enemy can work out really easily where to deploy their forces, even if they have to deploy first, because they can deploy their 2 after. So he had his shit warband of wild men that he just chucked at the back, and then I deployed mine, and he was like, okay, I'm just going to set up my crossbows to block all the lines of sight. And I was like, yeah, that seems pretty good. Oathmaker was at the back. Vrasku was just over here on the right, and then Gorolf with his men over here. I deployed Elrond and the Banner tucked in behind the building to give them a bit of protection, and then you can see in the first sort of History Channel style slide, which we're now calling it, there's my Riv Knights, and I split them up again into a sort of large force on the right, and then 2 bits on the left. In hindsight, I don't know why I did this, and it wasn't a great decision, as you'll come to see in a second.
Did you at least use the Asciliath ruins as cover?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I wasn't that much of a scrub. So basically, what I wanted to do, I realized at the start of this game there was 2 ways I could kind of play this. Either I had to just charge straight up the board, try and push him back, and break as quickly as possible while having dudes on the 2 central objectives, and then keeping my own safe. That was my main hope. Or I could try and kite him and outshoot him. And what I ended up doing was kind of both and neither. So with part of my force, I kited. And with
you attempted both and achieved neither.
So basically what I did, with one half of my army, I did one thing, and then with the other half of my army, I charged straight up the board. Which was really dumb. And basically, both these games, actually all my games, started with me high-rolling shooting, and my opponents being like, I fucking hate Riv Knights, and me being like, yeah, I can actually see why, because if a competent player was playing this, they'd probably win this right now. So I sniped off. His shooting was completely dud in the first 2 turns. I killed 5 guys with shooting with no response in the first 2 turns. Basically, every turn I'd get shooting the shield guy in front of Vrasku, and then another guy would jump in front and he would get shot, and then I'd shoot the guy in front of Vrasku, and it would just repeat.
Were you shooting at Vrasku?
Yes, I was. I
Okay.
was. Oh no, I wasn't, because I was deliberately not in range of his crossbows. So I was shooting at the front line of shield walls, not being in range of the crossbows, because I can move and shoot and he can't. And if I'd been smart, I would have used that later in the game. Really important. So yeah, moving to the second slide. Basically, the whole battle pivoted around this rock on the right-hand side. And the problem was it was a large enough rock for infantry to have cover, but not for cavalry to have cover. So what I did, stupidly, was I ended up with a fucking conga line of my units behind the only bit that was high enough for them all to hide behind. So I ended up with like my banner and Elrond all hidden behind. And yeah, a couple of guys got shot off their horses. So the smaller red blocks represent guys who've been shot off. So one guy got shot off as I was taking my guys through the center. So I just tucked him into the ruins by the objective for the late game, because I figured he wasn't going to do much else. And then I did exactly the same guy for this guy here. He was just tucked in behind the rock so he couldn't get shot, and I'd hoped to have him there in the late game. Basically, as soon as I started to lose some riders, I was like, oh crap, I don't have enough guys to hold the objectives in the late game. So I'm just going to try and break myself as quickly as possible and hope I still have these objectives. So that's essentially what I did. I sort of shot back here for as long as I could. And then, as you can see from the arrows, I basically made a decision in the last sort of 4 or 5 turns of the game. Okay, we're just going to charge up. I'm going to hope I break before he is able to outnumber me on the objectives. That didn't work. And the left-hand side of the board is one of the most catastrophic things I've ever seen in my life. I made a mistake of mismeasuring things, and my opponent told me this afterwards. You should always leave your cav 13 inches away from infantry models, not 10.
Because if you win priority, you move.
Even if I won priority, didn't matter, because he was just using Vrasku's move might to call moves. So he got his guys within 6, and even if I'd won priority, he just would have called move, because I had no hero on that side of the board. So there were 4 Riv Knights over here who just got like wiped out in 2 or 3 turns because they got bogged down. And that was stupid, because what I should have done is again just backed off and shot them and delayed Vrasku rather than charging in. My banner and Elrond just yeeted around the edge of the board, and I was, at this point I was like, I'm gonna lose. I had quite a nice idea with Elrond. What I was going to do is I was going to charge in Rafa Bruin and then knock them down, but unfortunately I wasn't in range of the charge, so I was like, fuck it, either way I'm just going to hope to win priority next turn. I had 2 foresight points saved up, and he rolled a 4, and I'd lost priority the previous turn. So all I had to roll was not a 1, and I would have won priority. I rolled a 1, and I then called a move, and then lost the move off.
Oh my god!
And he charged my guys, and then I just died quite quickly, but not quickly enough to avoid breaking. The one saving grace, though, the one highlight of this game, was Elrond on Gorolf. Elrond won the combat, had 3 attacks on Gorolf. Unfortunately, Gorolf hadn't called his heroic defense, which has made this even sweeter, but it was still pretty cool. Elrond rolled 3 nat 6s on the first turn and just like instantly killed Gorolf, and my opponent was like, oh.
Why didn't he call a defense?
Well, because he'd struck up to try and make a strike, but I just didn't strike back because I didn't have the might to spare, and still won the combat with the but apart from that, this was just a fucking disaster. You can see from the final slide how badly it had gone. So basically, down the bottom, there was a doorway where the blue square is, and I tried to move my 1 remaining archer to block the door. He held off a shield guy and 2 pikes for 2 turns, but then he lost the final turn and got pushed back from the doorway, and he ran his guys in. and he got 2 guys on the objective the very last turn of the game before I broke. So that went from being 1 point to me to being 4 points to him. Pretty brutal. So we actually went from drawing to a pretty hefty loss for me in literally that one turn. And then, we drew the centre objective on the right-hand side. He massively won the left-hand objective, and I never even got near the bloody final objective up here. Like, never got a model even close. Elrond didn't lose a combat and didn't take a wound the whole game. He was completely fine.
Wow.
Pretty much everybody else died, but Elrond was fine. He just didn't have like any big heroes to take on Elrond. Like he was literally just feeding him wild men. After I insta-killed Gorolf, he was like, "Oh, right, well, wild men go." And because they're fearless and Elrond causes terror, he was just feeding them in one at a time.
Yeah, I can see why he's got them, but he just seems at such a low points level. I feel like it's
also eight is excessive.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
You don't need 8.
Well, the problem is you need the Oathbreaker. Look, just take Berserkers. They're courage 7, and they've actually got a chance of doing something.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway,
but then you can get 3 wild men for 1 Berserker.
But you have to take the Oathmaker to make them fearless. So
it's true.
Then you might as well take the Berserker, and then you've got all the like Urukai keywords and stuff. Yeah.
Again, not super salty about this one. I think it was always going to be a bit of an uphill struggle. I think if I'd committed to one of the lines more heavily earlier on, I would have had a much better chance. I think going like half-hearted on both just resulted in like me getting swamped. Didn't really get a satisfying charge off this turn. It's this game. Like it was just a bit of a shit show from me. My opponent played it pretty well. Like he used his crossbows pretty smartly. It was just a little bit of a disaster, unfortunately.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Was it Luke?
He does. Possibly. I didn't write down my opponent's name, so I have to go and look. But yeah.
Right. My second game then, I was playing Thorin Stonehelm and King Brand. Thorin had 12 spears, 1 Goat Rider. Brand had 6 warriors with bow and 6 Knights of Dale, who are the guys that get +1 to wound if you charge them. As you can see from the first photo, my opponent decided he was going to try and make good use of his 6 bowmen and sit back and shoot at me. Which meant he instantly lost because he lost all board control. And the game... Was this one where the game ended at 25 or breaking 1 or 2? I can't remember.
Either way, 25.
It was 25. So even if
that's what I was really hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if he'd broken me somehow, the rest of my guys would have just ran. But he definitely didn't break me. So he sat back, shot me as much as he could. I ran forwards. I sent a huge amount of dudes around the left side. As you can see, it looks like I'm very sparse in the middle now.
There's hardly a model there.
Yeah. The reason it's looking so sparse, and I've said so many guys
game
around,
with 80 models on the board or some horse shit. What is this?
Well, I figured if he was going to hold that line there, if I was going to have to crash into that wall, I need to send a lot of guys around the back. Otherwise, I'm not going to win the fights one-on-one. And I think that's what he was hoping for. He was hoping I was just going to take the bait and run up into the middle. So next slide, I've got more guys moving up. So the first 2 turns, the scribe didn't get anything, 0-0. The scribe sitting back on the objective. I've got a guy on the left on the objective. You can't see him now because he's behind the building, but my opponent sent the Goat Rider around that building on the right. And the 5 guys I've got on the right-hand side kind of lagging behind. I know that my opponent's going to send him around the back. He wasn't going to go around the other side because there's so many dudes. So I just kind of left 5 guys lagging behind that could swamp him if they need to. Brought my guys up. What I've done is, because there's difficult terrain there on the right, my guys are moving through it slower. So I created this concave that I'm hoping my opponent will move into, knowing that, or hopefully thinking that he's going to be able to manipulate the fights in some way if he moves forward. So I want him to move forward because my guys are coming around the back. They're going to crash into him. I want to create a concave that I can quickly move around. So the next slide, you can see his Goat Rider did end up coming around the side. And unfortunately for him, I think probably an error on his part, he won priority, moved the Goat Rider. My guys were about 7 inches away. And then on my turn, having lost priority, I moved them 5 inches towards the Goat Rider. And then on this turn, I won priority and I just swamped him. I did end up just absolutely massacring him. But you can see my opponent moved his line up in kind of a defensive position, trying to get away. He actually called a move off to move into this position.
Wow.
I just let him do it because I was like, well, I don't know where you're planning to move to, but it's probably towards me, and I'm cool with that. You can see I caught one guy at the top there. Everyone else was in range of the move off and moved forward, charging the Goblin King and his cronies. But at this point, he's moved himself into a choke point, and he's actually created quite a large surface area for me to charge into. At this point, you can see there's a group of 5 guys at the top. They came in from reinforcements, and the turn after that, in this turn, there's 3 guys above them. They also just came in. So on the last slide, the following 2 turns, I had 3 more goblins come in each time. I just sent them to the objectives on the sides, just on the off chance he broke me, because I knew they weren't going to have time to come in. He did do a pretty good job at creating a defensive circle without surrounding himself, but without making himself trapped, essentially. He pulled a couple of quite nice moves that he might have done against UOT, where he deliberately traps Thorin or
to get the bonus,
to get the free heroic combat, which I thought was really smart. Essentially, I just ground him down until he broke, and then the game ended, and I was on all the objectives. I think we actually had 10 seconds on the round when we finished a turn.
Yeah,
so
we
were there. And as you can see, I mean, that all his models are in that photo. I actually control the objective in his spawn area, essentially. And he killed 23 goblins. I reinforced with 14. So the scribe got 0-0, 5-3-3-3.
Nice.
Which was pretty nice. Again, they were coming in quite late. But again, Ironhill Dwarves, he just has such a low model count. There's very little he could do.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, he might have needed to push forward sooner, having seen my goblins go around the side. Try and just do loads of combats, just kill as many goblins as possible while half my forces running around the side. Try and break through one of the sides objective. But you just didn't manage it. So.
One option is to just put it all on red and just go for the objective in your half. Try and get those points, because I think that what I ended up saying, in hindsight, I think I would have done is just be way more aggressive and just try, because the big swing in our game was that going from being 1 point to me to being 4 points to him. Actually, I mean, I was never tactically ahead. I was never winning this, but actually, nearly the whole way through the game, I was ahead on points.
Yeah,
it was just as it slipped away from me, and literally, I just ran out of models sitting on the objectives. That it turned into a loss. It was always going that way. It was just at what point I broke, and I did just break a turn or two late. But I would have been very lucky to get a draw or a win in that game.
I feel like this game was a bit different to yours, though, in that he was always behind. He was always losing, and it was I'm not going to change anything about the fact I'm I'm not going to take a risk to go forward. It's if you're behind, you need to take a risk. You need to do something, or you're just going to stay behind. And I was a bit. The front line was looking a bit thin at points, and I really thought he was just going to try and push forward through. But he was just a bit standoffish. So that was that game. So it was a 7-0 win. So at this point, I'm in contention for winning. Maybe.
You were doing really well. I was not at this point. I was actually in contention for an entirely different kind of award. I think I was actually quite lucky to avoid it, to be honest. I got a quite nice matchup in my final game, despite how scary it initially looked. So this game was always just going to be utter madness, like just based on his list and my list. Like there was no way this was going to be a normal matchup. So he had a dragon with Tough and Hide and Worm Tongue. So it was D9 with 9 wounds. And then it had spells effectively Compel and Transfix and a 4. Then the Bat's Warband was... the Dragon's Warband was just a Bat Swarm. And then Warband 2 was a Shaman with some shields and spear. And the other Warband 3 was a Shaman with 3 warriors and shields.
So your opponent had lost 2 games at this point as well.
Yeah.
It's a weird list.
It is a mental list.
Surely you just kill 6 goblins and break it.
Well, so this was what I did and what I shouldn't have done. And I only realised this afterwards because that actually caused me more problems. Because he arrived at this game with a plan, and on the face of it, it was really dumb, but it actually worked really, really well. And I actually, in hindsight, I was like, that's quite cool what he did. We'll go to deploy. Oh, sorry, this game was Divide and Conquer. You basically vetoed. Originally, this one was going to be Fog of War, but then I think there was a bit of concern about some lists people had bought, and that Fog of War wouldn't be that fun. So they switched it to a veto between Capture and Control, Assassination, and Divide and Conquer. I vetoed Assassination because I'm not sure I backed myself to kill the dragon. I'd given it a go, but I'm not sure I could kill the dragon. And then my only hero would also have been Elrond, so he would just probably have sent the dragon at Elrond, and I would have lost the game. So, so in the end, we went for Divide and Conquer, which was actually more, again, objective based, which, given how poorly the last one went, was an odd choice for me. But this one actually looks a bit more favourable with my knights. So, 3 objectives in the centre. The 2 either side are worth slightly less than the one in the middle, and then you got VPs for wounding the enemy leader and if they were broken. So we deployed like this. You deploy in corners on Divide and Conquer, and then you basically alternate your warband's deployment between the corners. So he deployed his first warband in this corner, and then I deployed my 1 warband, which again is not ideal. Having only 1 warband, it does screw you over a little bit. It's nice because all your force starts in the same place, but it then, doesn't give you much flexibility. And he deployed all the rest of the stuff on the other side. So then deployment looked a bit like this. You can see on this slide here. In the early game, I literally, what Onod just said was what I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to kill everything and I'm going to save the dragon for later. I'm going to break him as quickly as possible, try and get this game over with as quickly as I can. So I sent off a big contingent along with Elrond and the Banner Bearer down to kill this shaman and the chumps he had with him. And then I sent another lot over and this dude here just to go over, start harassing the dragon and have a few shots at the shaman and these dudes over here. The dragon has, I think, is it called like survival instinct or something? Is that what the rule's called? I'm not sure. I think when you get wounded, you have to take a courage test or you flee or something. It's the same thing Shelob has. So you don't. So fortunately, you don't have to fully kill the dragon. As in by taking all 9 of its wounds away, you can just, if you wound it, make it take a courage test. But that's easier said than done when it's defense 9. So yeah, that was the early game. Like it was pretty clear right from the start. I was like, okay, I'm going to have the objectives. Like this is pretty easy. It's just how I deal with the dragon. I was a bit worried he was going to be using Compel and Transfix and Elrond and try and bring them in. So I was super cautious. I actually pretty much ran Elrond all the way down the left-hand side of the board, like hiding behind this woodland. He was like pressed against here. I wasn't taking any chances. So next one, basically how things developed. It was quite a nice battle for me, and you'll see why at the end. He did quite a nice move here. This was a building down here. And as my guys came along, he called a move with his shaman. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I'll still be in charge range. There's no way you can run. But all he did was jump on the roof. So I wasn't allowed to charge him. So yeah, he's basically, my knights surrounded him and his shaman and the dudes were just hiding on the roof. So I couldn't charge them, which was quite funny. But yeah, so instead we just shot them off the roof. And apart from one dude who jumped down off the roof, charged Elrond, and then Elrond didn't kill in the subsequent combat. a real fucking low point. Elrond needed, I don't know if it was 4s or 5s on 3 dice with his Lord of the West, but it was pretty brutal. But yeah, I cleaned up the guys over here pretty quickly. Like, that's kind of a given. He got a few nice. He got a transfix off on Elrond with his shaman, but I just kind of let that through. I didn't really care. Like, it wasn't that consequential. And shaman died. It was only over here when I realised what his plan was, and it was when I moved my knights into charge range of his dudes, because I was like, the quicker I can get these guys kills, the better, and I backed myself to beat them in combat. And I assumed he would like try and run away, but he actually just charged straight into my dudes, and I cleaned them up in that combat, like killed all of them in one turn. And then I realised that he actually wanted to break, and he wanted the game to be over, because he what he could do with his dragon is he could move his dragon onto the objective in the centre. And because of the size of the dragon's base, I couldn't get into range of the objective without charging the dragon. And like, I was never going to win the combat against the dragon. And he could use like power attacks and magic and stuff like that. So basically what he did is he parked his dragon, and we'll look at it when you see the final slide in a second, you realise what I mean. He just parked his dragon on the centre objective, which was worth 5 points. And it meant the game was always going to be a draw unless I could somehow get the dragon off that point. So I broke him, and his bat swarm fled because it was only courage 2. So it was literally just the dragon and my entire army shooting at him for like 4 or 5 turns continuously.
Did he not get any kills then?
No, literally not a single wound on any of my army. The only offensive thing he did was a couple of compels on a Riv Knight with the dragon to keep them out of charge range, and the transfix on Elrond. That was all he did offensively to me the whole game.
Real power move right there.
It really was. Like, and I tried a few things. I tried to like bait him off the point with Elrond. I was like moving him into range, and he just didn't take the bait at all. Like, I was just like, oh, I need to get him off the point. So I had 4 continuous turns of everything in my army shooting at the dragon. I even made use of the Rivendell army bonus. This massive group here, on the left-hand side was 7 of my dudes. Just literally just nobody moving, just shooting at him. 3+ re-rolling. I hit the dragon, and I kept track because I started to realize this would be a meme. I hit the dragon 64 times with archery, and I failed to inflict a single wound. So it's not even I didn't have 64 shots at him. I hit him 64 times, and none of them wounded.
And you needed 1 wound to win.
So I needed 1 to go through. He had 3 fate, but with those 64 shots, I worked it out afterwards. I should have done between 3 and 4 wounds. I think it's marginally closer to 4 wounds. And then he probably wouldn't have saved all of those with fate. I mean, he might have done, but he probably wouldn't have saved all of those with fate. And yeah, I literally just needed 1 wound, and I would have won the game. So,
wow,
not salty, because it was a really funny game, and yeah, it was. I think like both of us were kind of in the vibe of like, okay, we're 2 losses in. It's a fun tournament. Let's not take this too seriously. Just have a bit of a crazy game. But I don't know. It felt nice because like the Riv Knights just destroyed everything, and then I just pelted him with arrows the rest of the game. But it was a bit frustrating not being able to like, secure the win. But a draw's not bad.
Well, speaking of not taking it seriously, my 3rd game, which I took very seriously and lost. I mean, what? Spoilers. So I very stupidly, I basically lost the game before it even started. In the veto,
your veto was slightly questionable.
Yeah, so I don't. In hindsight, I don't really know what I was thinking. Actually, I do know what I was thinking. So the one that OT used, where you have to deploy your army in 2 halves.
Yeah.
My opponent was using Mahud. So we had 2 Mahud Kings, a total of 3 Camel Riders, 17 warriors with shield and blowpipe and 3 half trolls. I felt like with his range and his slightly faster movement, he could have pincered onto my weaker of the 2 forces really quickly.
Yeah.
Of course, what I should have done is not vetoed that and vetoed assassination, because straight away, unfortunately, we rolled off and I had to veto first. If he'd vetoed first, it probably would have been a much easier decision. But really, I should have known to veto assassination. You have to pick a non-leader model to kill, and you have to pick a non-leader model from your force to kill that model. So if you kill their model with just at all, you get like 5 points. If you kill them with your assassin, you get 7. So he's got 2 models. So we both know which one I'm going to try and kill and which one he's going to try and kill with. So that made things really easy. I have 3 models he could pick: the captain, the scribe, or Grinnah. And in my head, I was thinking that he'd think that I'd think that he'd pick the... Fuck, where am I going with this? Okay. So,
you're trying to double bluff him.
Well, I correctly assumed that he was going to try and kill Grinnah, because Grinnah is my strongest model, and therefore I'd probably not think... Sorry, my strongest model he can pick, and therefore I'd probably not think he'd pick that, and therefore I'd throw him into combat to try and kill stuff. But knowing that he'd think that, I ran Grinnah and my other models back in the end. But I was guessing that he'd picked Grinnah, thinking that I'd throw him into combat. So you can see from the first photo of this game, he's sort of deployed centrally. Fair enough. He had to deploy first, and then I deployed the scribe, and then he deployed the rest of his army. So I essentially knew where absolutely everything was going. I deployed quite centrally. There's a really annoying forest in the middle of the board, which really kind of cucked me the whole game. But essentially, I'm thinking, okay, he's maybe picked, if he has picked the scribe...
You know what cuck means?
Give me a definition, Onod.
Maybe the forest was a cuckold.
Maybe I meant cock
to this so many times when I'm editing it.
Anyway, the forest was annoying, is my point.
The forest cuckolded you.
We move.
Oh.
He's silent for 45 minutes and comes in with that.
And then as soon as he makes some weird comment, it's like, hello. Don't feel that one. Oh, sorry. Go on. I'll shut up again.
Back in your box.
Oh.
Okay, so this game went really well for the scribe. He got 6 dudes in the first turn.
Such bull crap.
And
I
then
hate that model.
In the second turn, he got none. But the third turn, he got 7. 7 dudes. The turn after that, he got 5. So in the first 4 turns,
18.
He got 18 models. That's insane. Basically, as you can see from the next slide,
is that 70 points of goblins? It is. They're 4 points each. That's
so they all just joined the conga line. So now my 2 deep model line is basically all the way across the board. I couldn't even fit all of them in. So you can see my opponent's measuring to see if he's in range to charge that goblin. He is, because I put him there to bait him. He didn't take the bait. He just shot and killed him.
Nice.
So there's absolutely no heroes left of the tree. You can see my captain and Grinnah retreating towards the scribe there on the bottom. And it's because although I thought he picked Grinnah, and I ended up being right, I didn't want to risk it being the little captain in case he did go for the easy model. And looking at where his camel riders were, I was thinking maybe he's even picked the scribe. He's just going to run around the right-hand side. So I just started running them back. I figured, you know what, maybe my goblins can take his guys on without my captains. It's probably not going to matter anyway. So in the next slide, you can see the Goblin King has thrown a goblin. I'm just going to stop talking now.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh,
keep going. Sorry.
If I could kick you from the call, I would.
Onod is just some chaotic demon floating in the background, cackling away. Right. This next slide. Go. Talk about it. Jesus.
So in this slide, I figured, every time I could have thrown something with the Goblin King, I did, even if I needed a 6. Not because I was planning on miting it, but just because I thought it would be funny. So in this one, I did manage to roll a 6 to him, and I rolled a 4+ to hit the rider, and I killed him with a strength 8 attack. So a very lucky hit from the Goblin King there. That was the only throw where he managed to kill anyone.
Can he move and shoot?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah, nice.
He just gets -1 to hit.
Wow.
Does the goblin automatically die?
Yeah.
Oh,
worth it.
I hate to see it.
How many goblins would I have to throw statistically to kill a model? I'd have to throw 6 to hit. So that's already...
That's not how averages work.
Okay.
You'd probably have to throw... I have to work this out now.
Is it roughly 6?
No, it's way less than 6. Okay, it might be 3 or 4.
Okay. That's pretty good then.
Yeah. It's not
so
bad. You should I'll show you the maths later.
But then you have to. No, I'm just saying pretty good. But then you have to wound.
But it's strength 8, so wounding on 3s most of the time. 3 or 2.
Yeah.
Strength 8.
It's strength 8. It's basically a throw stone.
Yeah.
He's yeeting that goblin.
Yeah.
You can see the small space behind the Goblin King where that goblin used to live. So we'll pass to the next slide. There wasn't any photos between that and this slide because it was very intense and I didn't have time to take any photos. But essentially, this is maybe 2 turns from the end of the game because the game actually ended. Also, I think we've run out of time. But on the right, you can see his camel riders got around the side. I ended up bringing on 5 goblins on that side, not including the 3 or 4 that are still there, just to try and delay them because there was absolutely nothing stopping them from coming through to where my heroes are. I started moving the scribe across the board, as you can see, and I was just trying to delay him. Unfortunately, it probably led to my breaking even faster. But camel riders charging, strength 4 hit. He just sent nuts. 2 guys. So his camel rider into 2 guys. I think at least half of the time he actually killed both straight away. And then he'd go into another 2 and kill at least one of those. So,
well, the problem is he's wounding on 4s, isn't he? Like
it
against
just
your dude.
decimated
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, so he had the camel riders on the right just absolutely destroyed everything on that flank. My one hope was to bring everyone round the back of his force as quickly as possible and try and flank them. You can see the Goblin King is still straggling with his dudes to get around there. This turn, I combated off of the guy the Goblin King surrounded, and I managed to move into the guy just below the Goblin King and hurl him into the Muhud King, which had dismounted him. I knocked like everyone over. A few of his guys died. At the end of this turn, I ended up breaking because just his one-on-ones in combat, his half trolls just did work. He only had 3 half trolls, but he killed so many models with them. I don't know.
Because are they wounding you guys on your guys on
3s?
Well, I mean they're 5s, so 3s, isn't it? And then if they've got 2-handed, it's suddenly wounding on 2s, which is pretty good. It
was really brutal, and his blowpipes did work as well because he had like 17 models with blowpipes. So
you guys became a proper spectacle by the end. Like everyone was crowded.
There was literally like 6 people watching us. Yeah, it was a bit intense.
Yours was pretty intense, and especially like as both of you got fairly close to breaking, and we were like, "Oh, what's going to happen?"
I think he was 2 models away from breaking.
Yeah, he was, and and you did break, and that's when things.
Yeah. If I'd broken him, I would have actually won.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could have. I think if I'd kept my heroes close, maybe I could have done something. If I hadn't, if I'd moved back and been a bit more conservative, maybe I could have won. But
then, like you're saying, he's got better movement and blowpipes, and
I had to commit, and unfortunately, I had to run around those bloody cuckolding trees to get there.
Nice.
So. Ended up being a 3-2 loss for me. In the last turn, the Goblin King combated again, this time going into combat with the Mud King, surrounded him with like 10 goblins and just squished him. So I got 2 points for killing the Mud King, or maybe it was 3, I forget. No, I got 2 because I lost. So he got 3 because he'd broken me and was unbroken. So it was pretty close. I feel like I picked the wrong scenario for a start, but despite that, I was close. So he ended up winning the tournament. So fair play to him.
Yeah, he was good.
So that's it. That's
right.
It was really good.
Yeah, I think it went. I think like it was a really nice tournament, like first tournament I think for me to go to, because I think there were people who were taking like I think slightly unusual lists in a few cases, and most people were just there to have fun. I don't think nobody I played at least was going super try hard.
Yeah, I think as a first tournament it was really good. I was surprised you didn't win most sporting, because every time, like literally all the time, I could just hear you giggling at like some random shit that was happening.
Wacky shit kept happening in the games I was playing. Like it was just bizarre. I couldn't really. It was unusual, but I don't know. I think like just my lack of experience with the list really showed, and I just did make, especially in that first game. Like I should have won that first game. After the first couple of turns, I should have won that with how good my shooting was. Like I think he lost 10, like close to 10 models before we even went into combat. Like it was that was on me. And on me for losing. I think he was 4 models away from breaking before we went into combat, and like I threw that completely, which is in hindsight a bit frustrating. What are your critiques on Odd? What should we have done differently? What did we do?
You should have been more ruthless.
Okay, thank you.
I agree.
What should Mayor have done differently in the final game? What did he do wrong?
He should have vetoed a different game mode.
He's been paying attention.
I can't believe you left assassination in. It's like when I walked over, I was like, "There's no way he's playing assassination."
Well, the thing is, in my head, I was like, "Should I beat him like in a pitched battle with no objectives?" In my head, I'm like, "Yes." So if I just run my heroes away and I just crush him, like there's nothing he can do. Whereas the objective one, I was like, maybe he's got something up his sleeve. I don't know.
Yeah.
Our final positions then. Out of 20 players, I came 5th with 6 tournament points. If I'd drawn, I would have come 4th. And OT, you came 17th.
I did.
With 1 whole tournament point for your draw.
I did.
Very nice.
The real victory was the friends we made along the way. And in this case, that's not even me being that cynical. It was people were quite nice. So,
yeah.
Very wholesome.
And we can see some people's lists on here, actually. You can click and see their lists. The list that came last was Birder with 3 cave trolls. And then a Wild Warg Chieftain with 10 Wild Wargs.
10 Wild Wargs.
Oh, we need to see, where's the Legendary Legion list that they didn't win it, but Wolves of Isengard came second.
Yeah, it did. It top tabled.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Told you it was good.
Our credibility in the dumpster, as we said it was trash.
Yeah, he won all 3 of his games.
Yeah.
Wild Wargs are OP. I've been saying it.
Yeah.
Actually,
We were ahead of the curve.
3 people won all 3 of their games. That's pretty high.
Yeah. I think there were just some people who were just really good at the game there, and I don't think he normally brought Wolves of Isengard, but I think he did just play it really well.
Yeah. So that was our tournament. Thanks everyone for going. It was really good fun.
And we look forward to our next one. Is the next one the doubles in March?
Ooh, is it? That's exciting. Let's have a look.
Me and Onod will be prepping hardcore for.
Yeah.
And with our new understanding of Wrath of Bruin in its nerfed form, which really hurts our plans.
Is that Into the West? No. Is that it?
Might be.
No, I don't think it is.
Can't remember what it's called.
No, it's not Into the West. Defense of the North, that's the one.
Oh, right. Oh, no.
So
can you only bring Hobbit lists?
No. In February, there's another one in Worcester. That's the Sundering of Worcestershire, which is an 80-point GBHL event. I can't. Oh, it's the one that's 444 666 888.
We've entered that one, haven't we?
I think maybe we have.
Well, I've been making lists for it, so I really hope we have.
Let me have a look. Yes, you're on here. I'm on here. My brother's on here. Onod's obviously not on here because he's I don't know.
Currently setting fire to his home.
Yeah. So that'll be good. Yeah, that's I haven't been planning for that at all. What are your lists like for that?
Mine's the nutty Dane and Elrond list.
Oh, of course.
Which starts with 6 models. I think in hindsight, I may rearrange that list slightly. I think I might actually take Pure Riv Knights again, and I think I might bring
Goblin Town again.
444 points. I think you should actually get banned from the tournament.
It should just be a 50-point team where I take the Scribe and that's it.
And just high roll the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy win.
But I think I'll rebrand my Riv Knight list, and I think I'll bring Glorfindel and Legolas as well at higher points, and just hope that's enough.
I think you should take one of our created lists. I think you should ask for one.
What, with our rules?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this new rule. You've probably heard of it. It's a lifelong bond.
You can take any of the profiles except the ones that have that rule in.
Yeah.
Well, this is a GBHL event, so it will be a tryhard event.
Oh God! How many? What type of GBHL is it? 100, 90, 80? What? Okay.
It's still any GBHL event is going to be competitive. Like there are literally people coming from like Cardiff and shit. So.
Oh God.
Cardiff.
Foreigners, yeah.
Coming over here, winning our SPG games.
This one will be interesting. So it's 444, then 666, then 888.
Yeah. Do they still make the sculpted? Oh, I was about to ask a relevant question, but now you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll just edit all this out. It's just easier.
No. Go on, ask me a question.
You just set up like an automatic thing where it takes you out of the podcast.
Do you want to tell me more time?
Fuck off!
Answer the question.
Is there a sculpt of Legolas on horseback still that you can buy?
Yes.
Good.
It's the one from the Hobbit.
Oh.
It'll be in Mirkwood. It's a shit sculpt.
Okay, that'll do. My painting's not great anyway.
You can have mine if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, yours might stand out a bit in my army because
he doesn't have a sword, so
it's a well painted. That's fine. That's fine.
Just go on eBay.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather use Mares. It's free. You know, this is more cost saving tips.
Who said I was giving it to you for free?
Oh, okay. You're gonna rent it. You're gonna rent it to me on a performance basis.
Yeah, the better it does, the more money you owe me.
Cost saving doesn't enter into your calculations at all. You bought fucking like 50 million Riv Knights.
I know, but now I've got them forever, and so on that basis, they're an asset. They're like a 3-bedroom house.
Very similar.
Peas in a pod.
You could live in them. You could fit so many Riv Knights in this bad boy. Goodbye, everyone. Tally ho. Toodles. Thank you for listening to this review of Worcester Winter Wonderland tournament.
Fucking hell, sound happy about it, why don't you?
And
he's just sad because he wasn't there.
That's why. Next week we will be doing our highly anticipated
our highly anticipated compilation of best bits.
Our highly anticipated Christmas episode where we include highlights such as OT being miserable about 40k one time when we tried to get him to listen to some 40k lore and it went very badly, so we didn't put it on the pod. You can also expect highlights of when we did a pilot recording, which was so bad we didn't publish it as its own episode.
And the fact that everything that's going in this episode is considered too bad to be released in everything else.
Merry Christmas! And also, very excitingly, not me coughing, very excitingly, some cut profiles from the Rings of Power episodes, which were too good to make it.
What profiles are they?
Except that
it's a fucking secret snail, isn't it?
Secret
snake.
He's on to us.
He's on to us. He's funny. His memory.
Did you fucking record that separately or some shit? You fucking did. You were like, right.
We definitely weren't trying to get audio clips of you talking about Smaug so that we could splice.
Oh wow! Brilliant.
Unfortunately, you said he was shit.
You could just clip any clip of me, and I'm sure it'll be fine.
That is the plan. Yeah.
Is this still the outro, or am I?
No, you're gonna have to edit that quite heavily. It's goodbye from there.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from OT.
Bye, everybody. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah, it is Christmas.
Wait, this is the Christmas episode. I'm confused. And it's goodbye from me. Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
And a shit New Year. Ding that bell on the